Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, over the last few years, regulatory events and policy announcements have raised concerns about the government's support for the tech industry. Now, these pronouncements have put doubts on the government's commitment to innovation and the young people who are building startups in the country. However, the government says with the introduction of the startup bill in Nigeria, such concerns will be laid to rest, I beg your pardon. Now, today on the program, we will be taking a look at the bill, its contents, and how it intends to bring together all government agencies and parastatals under one vision to better the Nigerian tech startup ecosystem. And joining us to look at this, we have with us right here in the Lagos studio, Olanrewaju. He is the head of TC Insights and has 7 years of experience in Nigeria's digital economy sector. He has worked in different capacities in e-commerce, education, technology, and technology-focused media. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We also have joining us from our Abuja studio, he's Jude Ferrami. He is the CEO of Public Craft. It's a pleasure to have you as well. Join us today on the program, Jude.
Thank you very much for having me, Victor.
Indeed. We also have Oswald Gubadaya. He is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital Transformation. He is also an author and an entrepreneur with over 25 years of professional experience. It's a pleasure to join us on the program. He joined us via Zoom from Delaware in the United States. Well, let's just kick off the conversation with you, Olanrewaju. I mean, there's been so much buzz around the Nigerian startup bill. But what was your reaction when you heard about it?
Yes.
And what has stood out for you, since going through the draft of this document?
I think, so just like you mentioned in my introduction, I've been working in the sector for a while, and we knew about the initial startup bill, and how that encouraged or that supported the growth of the technology industry over there, and we had always wanted something like that. Generally anyone who has been in the industry for a while has looked forward to a moment when Nigeria will have something similar. So Nigeria is not the first country that is trying to introduce a startup bill. We've got one in Senegal, we've got one in Tunisia. So I think that was the first reaction. Finally we get to have something similar in Nigeria, that we make sure or ensure that there's regulatory certainty and a living environment for startups. We're trying to build companies in the country. The other thing is just working with different stakeholders on the bill, just the passion. Most people are volunteers, just making sure that we have something that ensures that startups have a chance to survive in Nigeria. And that's something that stood out for me.
All right. So, like you said, it develops the tech ecosystem in these countries that you made mention of,
Yes.
Tunisia and Senegal. What kind of development did it bring in that country, and how do you see that being replicated here in Nigeria?
So one of the key things is just there was, for example, in Tunisia, some of the provisions included things like tax incentives and things like that. Those things encourage investors, they encourage startups, they encourage just anyone who is looking into the industry. Oh, the government is friendly to the industry, and they're happy, to come and invest. They're happy to build a company. If you look at a country like Rwanda, things like incorporation take very, very, very little time. So those things are things that people look out for when they're trying to build businesses or startups in countries. All
right, let me just hold you there for a bit and quickly go to our Abuja studio where we have Jude Ferrami standing by. Jude, you are a member of the stakeholders who have been engaging the government, trying to put this bill together. How has that engagement been going? What has been the situation? I mean, has there been like a back and forth? And how much of agreement have you had in terms of putting together a final document before it is announced and taken to the president or even the National Assembly and all of that?
Okay, thanks again, Victor, for having me. First of all, the engagements that we've been having, I think the best way to put it is in my almost maybe 8 years of public policy advocacy for technology, I think this is this engagements that is going on now. I've I've seen the highest quality of representation and contribution from the MDAs. And I mean, that reflects in the engagements that happened last week, Monday and Tuesday, where ecosystem champions, people were drafting the bill, the Office of the Presidency brought MDAs together. We had over, I think, about 40 MDAs that have impact on technology ecosystem in the country. And on that day, we also had the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy come to the event to commit to that process. The Chief of Staff to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria was also there, amongst a number of other senior heads in the government circles. So, like you would hear that we've been saying, this is a co-created effort by the ecosystem and the presidency of the country to be able to bring about a law. In public policy circles, we call it a bottom-up approach to policy making, engaging all the stakeholders that are involved or will be involved in the implementation of these laws when it is actually passed. And so, I mean, in as simple as possible, this is the highest quality of engagement I've seen in a long while. And I'm happy about that.
All right, well, let's hope that the feeling you have at the moment, will continue when the time comes, when the document is eventually put, into the public space and also is being made an act. Yeah. But let me hold you there for a bit and quickly bring in Oswald Gubadaya, who is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital Transformation. Again, it's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. So one of the overarching objectives of this bill is to ensure that all of the government agencies and parastatals, come together, under one vision, to ensure that the tech ecosystem is, going to be that okay and vibrant place without all of the hitches, so to speak. Now, how is that going to happen? Because as it is, it seems to be that we have one form or the other of pronouncements, from different agencies. So how is this bill going to unify everybody under one umbrella?
So, I mean, what's key to understand is that, government is a massive a platform with a number of people working on a number of approaches and ideas that we all believe is for the good of the nation. The idea is to continue to review these ideas and synthesize these ideas against each other to ultimately see what's best for the country, nation, both politically and for the citizenship. So it's a continuous process that we always have to understand and continue to support to ensure the best ideas are the ones that end up being the rule of the day. So the approach for the NSB is one we call the Big Tent. I'm sure you've either read that somewhere or seen it in the media. The Big Tent is really bringing everybody together who has any part in the conversation about startups. That's both in government and private sector. We believe having these people together, having a discussion, I think like Jude just rightfully explained about the MDA engagement he recently managed, you would see that that's how we end up getting to the best of ideas that will help the country move forward, because that's ultimately the goal.
All right. So, speaking about helping the country move forward, so there is another bill also that, has been rattling tech startups, the NIDDA bill that has been rattling tech startups. So how are we going to ensure that, those sections that are in the NIDDA bill, ensure that, like Jude said again, everyone is happy at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think one thing we have to understand, and a key word that we have to take note of in the situation of the NIDDA bill, is the fact that it is leaked, right? That in itself tells you what and how serious you should take the document at this point. It means that it's just, if anybody goes into your documents and pulls some of the things you've written, I'm sure that it will be at the state at which is not ready to be presented to anybody else. So that document was not ready. It was still pre-engagement. with the sector, with the ecosystem. So ultimately, it's going to go through a process, just the same way the Nigerian startup bill is going through a process of engagement and understanding what works and doesn't work. As originally said, there's several ideas in government that for different reasons are put into conversation to determine what is the best way to move forward. It could be driven by revenue generation. It could be driven by documenting and understanding who the ecosystem is. But ultimately, what is critical is how it is implemented and how it is engaged, the engagement factor of it, to understand how it will ultimately impact the ecosystem that is directed at. The Nigerian Startup Bill, which is our primary focus, is a bill that's dear to the heart of the federal government. It's the actualization of the vision of Mr. President himself, and is heavily supported and driven by the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, as noted by the statements by the Honorable Minister Pantami most recently. So we continue to work on these several ideas with the sense that we're going to find the best position, and the best ideas should win the day and become the rule of the day.
All right, let me hold you there for a bit and come back, to our Lagos studio. So, I mean, over the years, there's been this level of distrust between the private sector, you guys, of course, and the government. What is going to be different this time around?
I think one thing that we're seeing, as Oswald just mentioned, is, the presidency is behind this. And we've also engaged the minister. Is also, the press is actually being driven by the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, like Oswald said. And we're seeing, engagement on both fronts, So we believe that there's political will this time. And like I always say is, there is no scenario where the private sector doesn't work with government. Yes, there's mistrust, but we always have to keep coming back to the table to engage government, because that's the only way that we'll be able to have regulations that support our growth.
Innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me also get to hear Jude's his own take on the level of mistrust that seemed to exist over the years between the government and the stakeholders. Jude, like you said, I mean, at this moment, everything seems to be rosy. The engagements, the communications, the flow of information between both sides. Yeah. Do you, by any chance, see things going all right in the coming days or the coming weeks?
So let me start by saying this, right? Especially with respect to the NITA bill. One thing that is key is ownership, right? You see here that the office of the president has taken ownership of the NSB, which is Nigerian Startup Bill that we're talking about. And the entire process and the bill itself and what is going to be in the bill, which is why all these engagements are happening. But for like Mr. Oswald already mentioned, the leaked NITA bill, right? There is no owner for that bill. Nobody has come to say, okay, what they want thinking about this bill. And I mean, we live in a country where anybody could write anything. In the National Assembly, with the way bills go, there are different proposals. People think, okay, let's pass a law that guides this particular sector, and then the honorable member or the senator says, you know what, send me something. And then you see that the proposal is being made. But for the NSB, we have concrete commitment from the presidency and the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. I think that's a very good place to start. In terms of mistrust, right, I also think that we come back to these commitment issues. I mean, there are no illusions, at least from my end and a number of people, that this process is going to go very smoothly with no hiccups at all. I mean, we would have to be in utopia for that to be happening. That recommendations will be made, and nobody in the MDAs, nobody in the National Assembly would have anything otherwise to say. But
okay,
the approach that we've taken so far is, like Mr. Oswald said, a big tent approach, a consensus approach. And I am almost optimistic that we're going to get to a place where everybody wins and everybody smiles.
All right, just hold your optimism for a bit. We'll take a quick break, and of course, when we return, we'll take a look at more issues in this bill. Please stay with us. Well, thank you for staying with us. We'll still have with us our panelists in the Lagos, Abuja studios, as well as via Zoom, joining us this time around from Delaware in the United States. Well, just before we went on break, Jude Ferrami was talking about being optimistic at how the bill would be when it is eventually finished and also taken to the legislature as well as finally to the president for assent, and then it becomes an act. But just before we come back to our panelists, let's take a look at some of the policy announcements that have not been so favorable to the Nigerian tech ecosystem. Well, there has been the ban on cryptocurrency, the ban on Twitter, the ban on bike-hailing apps in Lagos, the freezing of accounts of fintech firms, which, of course, drew a lot of ire in the past few weeks. But let me just come to you now, Larry, as we wind down this conversation. These are things that have happened in the past, and hopefully they don't come, knocking on our doors again, in the future. But let's even look at the infrastructure that we have, because, when you talk about tech startups, at times we dwell, on Lagos, maybe the bigger cities, but there are also tech entrepreneurs in the nooks and crannies. How would the NSB, ensure that infrastructure is put in place, in all of those other places?
Okay, thank you. So there are three major whys, as we call it, in terms of, for this bill. First thing is regulatory certainty. Second thing is enabling business environment. And the third thing is just local content in terms of skills for young Nigerians and all of that. So the second one is what addresses what you were talking about. There are provisions like tech parks and things like that in the bill that we believe will sort of show up the infrastructure, across the country. And it's a continued conversation, so there are going to be things that will be included, that will be changed and updated as we engage, different stakeholders in the industry.
All right. Also, let me also get to hear from Oswald. Oswald, now looking at ensuring that, we have an enabling system for those in the nooks and crannies, the issues of rights of way, the issue of hardware, the issue of software, internet penetration, how is this being addressed in the NSB?
So I would say that, there's a number of things that are being dealt with within government. If you look at the policy document, the strategy document on digital economy that was released by the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, a number of these issues that you've stated have been, addressed in 8 pillars that cover from infrastructure to training and soft skills and a number of things like that. This bill specifically addresses how to create an enabling environment, right, through legislature. And some of these things are on the economic side, like some of the incentives and some of the things that we expect for startups to be able to deliver to the country, like knowledge transfer and research, and a number of other things that come on the demand side. Incentives are a number of things that help them in developing their business around tax breaks and the such. So it's not the end all. It's one part of many things that Mr. President is driving to ensure that we create an enabling environment for our youths and our young people and our entrepreneurs, who are not all necessarily young. Some older people are entrepreneurs as well. So we continue to drive these different work streams to come to an end where we have a desirable environment to create value.
All right, so one other thing that a lot of Nigerians would also want to be addressed is the issue of cost. Now, cost of internet data, cost of hardware. Is there any engagement with, I know this is business, I understand, but is there any form of engagement with the telcos, with the providers of hardware to ensure that, these services, are brought down to a level where, even those earning minimum wages can be able to afford, internet, robust internet now, or maybe broadband internet, and high-end tech devices? Is there any form of engagement? Will the NSB be addressing something like that?
No, the NSB will not be touching on those topics, right? So once again, I would say that if you look at some actions that have been done by the NCC, I guess in the last 2 years, that's actually addressed cost reduction. Honorable Minister Issa Pantami was actually heavily involved in providing, some relief on the cost of data and the cost of basic telephony. Those areas are in the auspices of the Nigerian Communications, NCC, and the ministry. So those things are, everyday activities that are being dealt with on a day-to-day to ensure that we continue to provide value to our citizens. The Nigerian Startup Bill technically speaks directly to tech-enabled businesses and how we can create an environment for them to grow, right? To actually increase the number of startup companies that we have in the country and actually have them thrive, so that we actually provide value to the citizens, right? So that's what it particularly speaks to. Some of the issues, what tends to happen is that, we have a number of areas, I wouldn't call them problem areas, but a number of areas where we need intervention. And it's not saddled on one particular tool. So the NSB is one tool, and it comes in and it solves the problems it's intended to solve. There are a number of other initiatives that are being executed on that are meant to solve some of the other things you mentioned.
All right, let me hold you there and hope that, of course, all of these will be addressed, and hopefully more of the things that I mentioned will be added along the line. But Jude, as we wind down, I wanted to confirm the robustness of the MDAs that are engaging the federal government on this with you. How robust is that?
I can assure you that, like I said, in my experience, and this goes all the way back to 2014 when there was an attempt to pass the Nigerian Research and Innovation Bill. This is the highest level of quality representation that I have seen. Okay. In terms of technology policy and laws. But I wanted to say something on the bans that you mentioned and why I think the NSB is coming at a time that is very important. You see that the technology ecosystem has grown, in spite of this unclear regulatory environment over the years, with the number of raises that we've had, number of startups that are increasing, number of fintechs that are growing in Nigeria. This bill, this Nigerian startup bill, will provide some high level of regulatory certainty and clarity. Okay. So that, for example, one of the things I know here is there's going to be a council on the committee in the bill that will be set up. There's going to be a technical committee in the bill that will be set up. That a number of all these policies that are happening, all these bans that we're seeing, there's going to be more general oversight in terms of what the startup space looks like. And this is the time to do it.
Well, I can't agree any less, but of course, I also share optimism, and I hope that when the bill finally lands, it will be the document that will make sure that the Nigerian tech ecosystem is better for the good of Nigerians. But I have to say thank you to all of you in the Lagos studio, Lanre via Zoom, Oswald, as well as in our Abuja studio, Jude Ferrami. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today on the program and sharing your thoughts on this very important bill.
Thank you.
Well, that's the program today, but we'll leave you with the movie videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Thank you for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.
To kick off this week's most viewed video is a revelation that Nigerians are unlawfully sentenced to 140-year jail term in Italy.
So I'm here today, madam, to notify you of the plight of those Nigerians that are languishing in prison, held under Article 416 of the Italian Mafia Criminal Code, without any single evidence of those crimes committed.
It is followed in fourth by the reversal of an alleged curse on Nigeria by the new Olu of Warri, His Royal Majesty Ogiame Atuashe III.
I, Ogiame Atuashe III, the 21st Olu of Warri, the first son of Olu Atuashe II, the grandson and direct descendant of Olu Erejuwa II, who was offended on this throne, I hereby reverse the curse placed over this land.
third spot is taken by the interview of Channels Television with former military president of Nigeria, Ibrahim Babangida, as he turned 80.
It's always better to take a decision, even if it is a wrong decision. A decision should be taken, which one, as a leader, you considered is the best interest of the people. The rest you leave it for history. Because there is something that history will look at and say, okay, he has a basis for taking that decision.
Another video of the new Olu of Warri is in the chart, this time in second, as he shed tears while worshipping God during his coronation ceremony.
For argument, you are God all by yourself.
While in first is the Olu again, releasing forgiveness to the federal government.
To be witness to the beginning of a process of what would be an independent Nigeria.